A common indictment against religion is that it seems to be the source of much of the strife in the world, and even in many individual lives. And I have to say, sadly, that I think it in fact is unassailable that institutionalized religion has perpetrated, I said has perpetrated, mass injustice and committed other sins, and at times permitted massive sins throughout history. There are certain seasons that, to take a subcategory of religion, there are certain seasons of time where religious Christianity has been particularly culpable. And you might say, how can this be, and why would you stand and admit that? Well, let's speak about it. First of all, religion gone awry is dangerous both to individuals and every other dimension of human society. It's the unique nature of religion that when it's misunderstood and practiced improperly, it is inherently dangerous. And here's the reason why, at least let's say part of the reason why, but I think this actually speaks somewhat comprehensively to the root of the problem. Last week I talked about religions, and I talked about how that every religion has certain commonalities. There's some kind of a claim to truth, even if that claim to truth is the idea that one can't expect to discover truth. That's still a truth claim. Every religion has a truth claim and a set of standards by which the people who follow that religion are called to live. I talked last week about how the commonality of the moral principles taught in religions offer powerful evidence of the existence of God, a moral lawgiver, that the proliferation of religions is actually one of the greatest cases to be made for the existence of God. And then every religion offers a set of disciplines that must be followed in order to attain to the standards of the religion, and perhaps to appease God or to connect with God, and certainly to live a moral life as understood in that religion. This is true in terms of the disciplines, whether it's the keeping the rules of Judaism as given by Moses in the Old Testament, or subscribing to and trying to practice the pillars of Islam, or walking the eightfold path of Buddhism. The fact is that every religion offers a set of rules that must be followed in order to live up to the standards that are set. Well, what I taught last week is then that every path, last week's topic was, does every path lead to God? And my answer to that was to say that every path leads to Jesus. And by that, I mean that every religion brings people short. And the reason it does is because whatever the standards that are set, and whatever the rules that are offered, nobody has ever been able to keep all the rules and to do whatever their own religion calls them to do to lead them to God. This is why the Apostle Paul set out a different premise for what I'll call authentic Christianity. He said that no one, in Romans 3, will be declared righteous in God's sight by observing the law. Rather, through the law, we become conscious of our sin. So understand, he was speaking specifically when he was writing to the Romans about Judaism and the law of Moses, but he's also speaking larger to the idea of the law principle. The law principle is this idea that human beings attempt through their own efforts. Again, it can be the rules of Judaism, it can be the pillars of Islam, it can be the eightfold path of Buddhism, and I could go on. But we attempt by keeping some kind of law or set of laws to earn the favor of God. And what happens is that because we're not comparing ourselves to each other, but we're being compared to a holy God, none of us, no one, ever has measured up. And so Paul says, what does this attempt to keep the law do? It leads us all to the same place. It leads us to a consciousness of our sin. It leads us to a place where we know we can't do it, and we need a Savior. And see, this is where Jesus shows up. And Paul says, but now, apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been made known, or this way to be made right with God has been made known, to which the law, now he speaks specifically to the law of Moses and the prophets, the Old Testament prophets testify. He says, this is what all of that path led us to this point, he says. This righteousness is given through faith in Jesus Christ to all who believe. And then he unpacks that idea for a little bit and closes his thought with verse 27 saying, and this is key, where then is boasting? It is excluded. Because of what law? The law that requires works? No. Because of the law, in quotation marks, that requires faith. In other words, he says, the only rule in Christianity about being made right with God is this. It's to believe. It's to believe in Jesus. That's the law you have to keep. In fact, the New Testament teaches us clearly that we are counted to have kept all the laws when we've believed in Jesus. We are accepted by God on the basis that Jesus kept the law, was perfect in every way, paid the penalty that we owe God for our sin, and told us that He would appropriate His perfection into our lives through our faith in Him. So we are, as opposed to every other religion, including religious Christianity, we are connected to God not on the basis of our works, but by keeping one law, believing in Jesus. Okay?